Good morning, and good morning to all those watching on Facebook. I've never had a warm-up man before. No one has put as much pressure on my presentation, so thank you for that, Andrew. Right, I will start by asking 3 questions. And for each of these questions, if it applies to you, I'd like you to raise your hand in the air so I can get a good indication of who it applies to. And this is more about how you're using technology in your lives. So let's start with the first one. Who here in the last 12 months has purchased anything from Amazon? Hands up, in the air. About 75% at a guess. Okay, next question. Who in the last 12 months has used the following to make a journey? Uber. Hands up again. I'd probably say that's about 40%. And the last and final question. Who in the last 12 months has used a service like this or similar to this? Tinder. Let's have a show of hands. It's really difficult to see any hands. There must be someone who's used Tinder in this room. Now, anybody my age in the audience or older is probably thinking, what on earth is Tinder? So I can relate to that. So why did I ask those 3 questions? What's quite clear is that all of you use technology day in, day out in relation to the services that you purchase. And that will only increase as we go forward. In the next 12 months, if I was to ask this question again, those figures would increase, albeit it might be a bit difficult for Uber, depending on how the legal case goes. But what we're actually demanding is disruption from the things that we buy and consume. And actually, our clients are no different. They want better provision of data. They want us to get to a point quicker. They want us to actually advise them with greater intelligence. And technology can help us with that. And it can help our opportunities when we work with those clients. So let's look at today's structure. Today is about how, as building surveyors, we can convert the data we capture into intelligence and add greater client value. I'm going to break this down into 5 parts. An overview of the questionnaire that we recently issued to gather an understanding of PropTech. Why should we use it? You've heard some of the arguments from Andrew, but why as building surveyors would we use PropTech? I'm going to give 4 examples about how we can convert data into intelligence. I'm going to run through the support the RSS will make available, and then finally, where next. So let's start with the questionnaire. And for those of you who are not aware, we actually issued a questionnaire in March. To all our RSS members, not just building surveys, to try and get a sense of how technology is being adopted, what are the challenges, and what their thoughts about how it would go forward. That's the report, which is actually in your apps now. It was launched this morning at 10 o'clock. It goes live on the website at 11, so you're the first people that will have the opportunity to see this. And the headline numbers in terms of responses were that we had 303 responses, 88% of them in the UK, and 81% of them were our RSS members. Look at that a bit further. 45% were building surveyors, 59% SMEs, and 41% large organisations. So good set of robust data that we can use the information from in terms of how we actually plan going forward. So let's look at some of the headline stats. 5 key questions that we actually asked within the paper. What you see here is that more are using technology than understand it, and even a lesser number have the skills and expertise. So you can only assume for that we're an optimistic bunch, that we pick up a mobile device and we actually go out and carry out surveys. But the flip side of that is actually we're incredibly positive about the impact of technology. And nearly everyone that responded to the questionnaire actually sees it as an opportunity, not as a threat. We did break that figure down at the end in more detail in relation to professional groups. 96% of building surveyors actually see it as an opportunity. For our friends who are QS, they were 100%, and also the residential surveyors were 100%. But not much difference between the different professional groups there. So let's look at some of the key challenges that were identified. And there were 3: lack of knowledge, cost, and ROI. And what I'll try and do, in the examples that I'm going to talk about later, is I'll cover those points in relation to each one. So we had lots of helpful comments that came back, and I've just selected 4 that actually identify some of the key points that were being brought out. So the first one is a really good one. Technology has to be the way forward as an aid. The key word there is aid. This is not about replacing you. This is about augmenting your outputs in terms of providing more intelligence. It's about taking your expertise, your skills, building upon your reflective thought to generate more meaningful outputs. Next one. We have tried a few things, and it's difficult training people to learn such alien things. I have no idea what software was in mind when he made that comment, or she made that comment. But I think what it underlies is the fact that some of the software and some of the technology we use isn't ideally fit for what we want. And we get blown away by bells and whistles without any intent to hit the bell or blow the whistle. And it's about how you understand what you need to deliver those outputs. There's a whole range of things out there. So think about what the issue is and work back and reverse engineer it, and that will give you, hopefully, a solution. Not just about productivity, it's also about better intelligence, knowledge and insight. Absolutely. It's also about adding client value. Adding client value that actually gives the opportunity to the client to have trust in what you provide and actually repeat instructions with them, creating a long-term relationship from the advice that you can give. And finally, my favourite comment of all is it's tough to get the old boys using smartphones, let alone new software. Oh, to be young to make such a comment. But that comment and comments like that were made many times by younger surveyors in the profession who are rather frustrated that they're working in an organisation or for an individual who's holding them back. And the danger we've got there is that those individuals might leave. The very people that we want to help us go forward with the skill sets. So that is the questionnaire. So let's move on now to why. Why would we use PropTech, and what are the issues that actually would drive us towards its adoption? And the first point we've already touched on, it's client demand. We demand disruption in the services we buy. And the companies who can respond to that demand or actually disrupt themselves a better place to get our custom. It's exactly the same with what we provide. And if we can do that, what we then can do is generate the intelligence that we have into meaningful outputs to provide to a client. And that image is deliberately selected in that it's taking what's in our skills and it's actually using technology to provide better outputs. And if we can do that, it will help the client make better decisions. Better decisions generally mean better investment in terms of how they spend their money. A client who spends less money or maximises that investment is generally a happier client. Happier clients generally give repeat work, which makes us happy. Everybody's happy by using PropTech. But the point there, I think, is that if you can pull those things together, then you're creating a meaningful relationship based upon the value you can add. So that was why. So let's look at PropTech. And I'm going to pull a few examples out within the time we've got available, focused on data to intelligence. We could spend days talking about PropTech, but what I'm deliberately trying to do here is some examples of where I believe we can disrupt positively what we do to add greater value. And this builds upon feedback from last year's conference where we actually spoke about asset management. It builds upon the questionnaire results in terms of people want low-cost solutions, solutions that are not overly complicated with training, and actually something that can add meaningful value. And we invited companies to help us with that, and we actually got 4 that came together. OcuWare for drones, Go Report for mobile data capture, EO Consulting in terms of data analytics, and Trident, who I work for, in terms of building surveying input. So let's start with drones. And this is deliberately looking at how the information we get from drones we can absorb quickly and provide advice. So what you'll see here is, zooming in on the glorious, wonderful county of Yorkshire, we've actually identified 3 sites there. So let's zoom in a little bit more in detail. And you'll see at the north, we've got the Salvation Army Hall, a client of ours who are very, very keen in terms of how they can use technology to actually add value to their communities. To the left, we've got the parish church. And to the south, we've got a gymnasium. And it's the gymnasium I actually want to focus on in a little bit more detail. And what you can see here is every single image that we took with the drone is individually identified. So gone are the days where we've got an SD card with lots of different images, not having any idea where they are. You're spending time wading through it, or you're giving it a client who is equally doing the same. What we can do now is we can isolate an image. We can look at that image. And if we want, we can then zoom in on that image. So very quickly, we've gone from an overview to isolating a location on a building to looking at great detail, and we all know what that is, which is cutting-edge corrosion. And you've got to that point quickly. You've not waded through lots of information. We can do exactly the same with thermal imaging. So again, overview of thermal image. We're going to pick one there. And you can see on that image there are one or two things that would need further investigation. You can equally carry out some simple area measurements. On the left is the free piece of software that I mentioned. I started with Google Earth Pro. And you can see there, we've calculated an area of 83.34. We look across on the right, which is a more commercially available piece of software, usually provided by the guys who do the drone surveys, 83.11. So actually, on the face of it, it's not that much different, but that's a 3D image. So you can see that if we actually apply the right-hand side, it takes us to 85. But the free software gets you nearly there. So if you did have flat roofs and you wanted to calculate the area, then the free software that you can actually get off the internet would enable you to actually get that calculation. This here is the RSPB headquarters in Sandy, Bedfordshire. We did a PPM survey with them last year. Again, another client who's really keen on using technology is looking at how they can invest more wisely on their assets. We did get a quote for a mobile elevated work platform for that site. But actually, it would have been very, very difficult. It would have caused disruption. It would have actually churned up some of the lawns. It would have actually been environmentally not what they were looking for. So we actually went for a solution to actually get a drone, to actually allow us to get high-level quality images of that building. The drone survey actually came in half the cost of what the mobile elevated work platform would have cost. So this is a good example where we're getting exactly the same outputs, arguably better, more efficiently in terms of cost. So that summarises drones, data collection, analysis of that data to get to a point very, very quickly. So let's move on to something that I know Andrew talked about that you may or may not have come across, which is the use of 3D images, which is increasing all the time now in terms of how we look at buildings and how we can understand the issues within those buildings. This is the gymnasium. So what you can see here, within the gymnasium, you can take a 3D image of the gymnasium, you can wander through the building, you can navigate around in terms of the different views of the building, and then if you want, you can immerse yourself in that experience by actually diving in, wandering around, looking around that image, and then what you then can do is home in on a level of detail that is incredible to understand what the issues might be in that building. That's using a 3D camera. How could you use that? It's really up to you. You could use it for a defect survey. You could use it for project management at the point of handover, identifying anything you wanted to focus on. So the limitations are really what you want to apply to it. That's the overview of the gym. You can see there now I've got 4 red dots. Top right-hand corner, come across to the left, you see another 3 there. And what these have enabled me to do is isolate exactly the location of something that I need to identify. And in this case, it was a scheduler condition, and those were the 4 areas where I identified poor condition issues. So if we look at the top right one there, and zoom in on that, you can see here, it's a door with wet rot. What we've got at the top is the information we've captured using mobile data capture, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. And at the bottom, we've got a link. And that link we can share with the client or send it to anybody we wish. They would click on that, and it would open the model at that point, instantly for them, to understand the issues we're raising. You can also generate floor plans. You'll see here, this is a simple floor plan that's been generated using Matterport Car. I think it's about $20 you would pay additional for this. Simple, quick. Most of us actually carry out surveys with no plans, so actually getting to this point actually is a lot better in terms of how that works. But what we didn't realise was the secondary benefits. So this is the homepage of the gymnasium. What the owner of the gym did was to actually place the model on his homepage. What we found was that at the time prior to this, prior to the model being on there, 10% of their memberships were through online. Now, it's 90%. They had 800 members. They now have 1,200 members. So we got an immense amount of secondary value benefit beyond the original purpose. That has generated visibility for the gym. It's generated visibility for us, in that now we've been approached to actually project manage a whole range of other schemes on the back of this type of principle. So it's about how we can get extra value for you to win more work, but equally for the client to actually value what you provide. That's the camera. The Matterport guys are here in the room behind. Go and have a chat with them. That camera's about £3,500. It sits on a tripod eye height. It's about the size of a laptop, but thicker. and it rotates in 20 seconds. They issued a firmware update, I think about 3 months ago. When we did the gym, that took 4 hours. It would now take 10,000 square foot in 2 hours. So you can work the maths out how that would cost. And this is so simple that if you can use an iPad, use an iPhone, you can use the camera. It's another option in terms of how you gather and collect data. So that's 3D images. What we wanted to do was to try and find a way that we could connect all of this data that we're collecting to actually add some real value in terms of how it pulls together. And one of the things you spotted on the floor plan was an isolated individual 4 points where we actually identified condition issues. And sometimes that's quite hard in terms of mobile data capture. There's geotagging, but it's not very accurate. And therefore, sometimes you have to create a manual table at the back or a plan where you individually mark it up. So what we wanted to do was have the ability to isolate with absolute precision where the condition issues were, that you could apply to a PM, a snag, or anything at all. And with that, GoReport developed what they're calling smart pushpins, which I believe they're launching today. And they're here today, so please go and have a chat with them. So you'll see now, using the same plan, the door that I highlighted earlier, you'll see there now, I've highlighted that dot. The surveyor, with their finger, place their finger on the iPad, iPhone, record it in exactly the location where that issue is. They then recorded all the information you would normally capture, and what that allowed was the individual record of those 4 points. And again, you could apply this to whatever you wish. Again, it's how you use it. But what you've got here is the floor plan that is in the report, in the HTML report. And it allows you or the client to click on any one of those dots, and immediately it would take you to the point of the report. So gone are the days where the client wades through lots and lots of information. The client's getting to a point very, very precisely to maximize their time about the advice you're giving them. But we wanted to go one step further. We wanted to find a way of linking the Excel spreadsheet that's automatically generated with the photos to create a bi-directional link. And what you see here are all the records of what we captured on site. Column I is the photo that we took on site using the mobile device, and column J is the link to the Matterport model. So I click on column I, takes me to the photo in the report. If I click on column J, takes me back to the exact point within that report. So what you can see is a link where we actually create ease of navigation throughout various sets of information and detail. Allows you to advise them very precisely about the things you want to focus on. So that is mobile data capture linked with deliberate isolation of identification of points which actually would be useful. But one of the things which is often missing with the data we capture is an analysis that takes place with it. And at the point we're handing over a report that we've spent days, weeks to gather, and all that intelligence, we sometimes lose the opportunity to then extend our relationship with a client by providing advice that could lead to contract admin and project management, in that you're the best people to provide it. You've been working on that site for several days. So we wanted to find a low-cost solution that would allow us to do that. So we, with the help of EO Consulting, developed Microsoft Power BI dashboards, a very low-cost solution that would do that. And what you see here, very simply, this, and you can push any data into this. It's agnostic in that regard. You can actually push any data from any source. Here we've got a number of sites across the UK, 7 of them on the left. We've then got to the right, grades and priorities, 5-year plan which breaks it down, and it identifies that's 1.97 million. But if I actually didn't have 1.97 million, I only wanted to look at things that were really important to me, what I would then do is I would then isolate D. Immediately, in seconds, it provides you an overview of that. But actually now what I want to do is actually only look at 4 sites. So I click on those 4 sites, and it gives me the overview of that. Now, the training for something like this is exactly what you've seen. It's that simple. We work with a number of clients that have very, very expensive asset management software that costs thousands and thousands of pounds that cannot produce that simplicity. Because coming back to my earlier example, all these bells and whistles that take a lot of training, they're not sticky. People pick them up, it's too difficult to remember, they drop them. That is so simple that anyone could use it. And the clients that actually are using that now are really delighted in terms of how they can understand their assets better and how we can provide information and intelligence to them in terms of how they manage them. But there are examples as well. There are millions of permutations of these. It's what you want them to be. You can see this one here looks at a cost per square metre benchmark. And this one is a survey that we did only a couple of weeks ago. It's a latent defect survey. But now what we've done, linking with GoReport, is we've got a bi-directional link with GoReport, pulling in all the photos from the survey that we carried out. And you would click on any of those photos, and you would isolate the row underneath of what you found. And some of the clients we're talking about now actually are looking at this as the way to replace paper reports. They want to get to a point. They don't want to lose any of the data, but they want to get there a lot quicker. So that is data dashboards, mobile data capture, drones, and 3D imaging. So a few examples there in terms of how you could look at what you do with low-cost solutions, with low training, but add maximum value. So this is not about AI. There are things we're looking at AI with EO in terms of how we generate information. But it's a few months off yet before I can share anything about that. So what I'd like to do now is look at the support available from the RICS. The website and journals provides lots of information. Today's conference material will be there. Equally, the journal, pretty much most months now, has an article in relation to PropTech. In October, I did one on positive disruption, and this month I've done one on data capture and how that data capture can conversely look at how you manage those assets, but equally how you can become more productive in terms of how you generate it. For those interested, in about 7 weeks' time, there's a digital built environment conference which will go into a lot more detail in relation to PropTech. If that's of interest to you, we'd love to see you at the day. It's in Victoria, London. One of the things we're quite passionate about at the board is how we engage with future generations. Today's all about how we can help you in terms of raise some awareness of the things that are out there that you could possibly employ and adopt. But Dr. Kevin Thomas and I on the board have now developed a programme wherein we're engaging with universities to take the issues we've talked about today and to run workshops with them that will help them to be better prepared for when they join you and the value they can add for you in terms of addressing some of these issues. But also get in touch. My details are in the app. The last slide I have up today, we'll have them on. Get in touch. Please grab me today. Connect on LinkedIn. Give me a phone call or email me. I'd love to have a conversation with you in terms of how we can take these things forward. So where do we go next? So we've covered a lot today, and it's just, I think, useful to go back to Andrew's presentation at the start in terms of 88% of what surveyors do is subject to potential automation. I'd probably say lots of professions are subject to that. It's not just us. Just in the same way that we started with Amazon and Uber and Tinder, they're disrupting themselves. And what history tells us is for companies that don't embrace those changes, they actually are not with us anymore. I was watching the BBC this morning. I think there's a technology conference on in London about fashion, and they stated that companies that do not adapt will die. And there's just 4 examples there, but there are many, many more examples of companies that haven't adapted. I'd like to leave you with 4 points from a presentation. Before I do that, I'll talk about the positive impact in terms of where we find ourselves and the opportunity, and that we, I think, are well placed for the future. You've told us this. You've told us this in terms of the survey results that came back. So I don't think, from what I've seen, that we're daunted by the prospects. And the where next in terms of the 4 points is that if you're not using technology, then please have a go. Give it a go. In the next 6 months, try one thing and see if that adds any value. For those that are using it, try and add something to it. Expand your use of PropTech. For those of you that are using PropTech heavily, and I'm sure there are many in the audience, please share your thinking. You'll help the whole profession, but you'll equally help yourself being viewed as thought leaders. And for me, my commitment back to you is that through the board, we'll keep you constantly informed on the website, through LinkedIn, and through journals about the things that are affecting the profession. Finally, from me, with the tools that we have available now, I genuinely, passionately believe there's never been a better time to be a building surveyor. Have a great day at the conference. Thank you.